Hi, let's try this again. Welcome back to Monday Night Mythbusters. I'm Dr. Carolyn George, and tonight I'm flying solo as Leslie, my awesome health coach, is out traveling. So, hi Leslie, wherever you are. So tonight we're going to be speaking about probiotics, and also I'm going to talk a little bit about prebiotics and postbiotics. So please feel free to send in your questions. I know there's a lot of confusion about postbiotics, prebiotics, probiotics. What the heck are they? Why do we need to be eating them or taking them? What do they do? And why is this something that's recently become kind of all the fashion to talk about? So I would like you to, anybody who's watching, give me a thumbs up if you're taking any prebiotics, so I can kind of see how many people out there are already using some probiotics or prebiotics. Okay, so let's see those thumbs up. And again, remember to just send in some questions. I am going to try to do some of the technical stuff that Leslie usually does. So just give me a second here while I try to share kind of what we need to do here. I'm going to see if I can make this happen. Anyways, the probiotics. Let's start off first with some definitions, okay? So probiotics are, it doesn't seem like I'm able to do that either. So I am technically challenged, and we'll just have to share this afterwards. So probiotics. Pro, before, pro is like promoting, pre means before, and post means after. So a probiotic is a microorganism that is in our bodies, that is not pathogenic, and that gives us some benefit. It lives in symbiosis with us, so it helps us and we help it. Prebiotics are those things that we feed to the probiotics to make them grow. And this is a term you may not have heard of before, but postbiotics are the little nutrients that the bacteria make through their metabolism that actually helps to feed and nurture us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about postbiotics at the end, but first I want to just to let you know that there's a whole spectrum of things having to do with these little organisms. So are viruses probiotics? They can be. There actually can be some viruses that are really healthy for you. So not all viruses and bacteria are bad for us, as we have kind of been led to believe. Hi Leda, hi Cheyenne, hi Ellen, and hi Leslie. I see she's actually watching from where we are. So these organisms can be healthy for us, right? We have a gut that's filled actually with them. We have tens of billions of bacteria in our GI tract, and we also have bacteria in our nose, in our ears, in our vagina. Any place where there's a little place where they can kind of hide, they'll be there. Our mouth, for sure, we have a very large microbiome in our mouth because that's the beginning of our GI tract. So these bacteria live in these little areas and do things that keep us healthy and nurture us. They're not pathogenic, meaning they don't cause disease unless they're there in a disproportionate amount. So proportion and balance, as with all things, are important with the microorganisms as well. So these bacteria and viruses, and some people are thinking maybe even parasites, but we're not going to even get into that tonight. That's a topic for another day. Hey there, Brian. Are living in our gut. And what's really cool is that we used to think that babies in utero were sterile, but now we're finding actually that they also have a microbiome too, even before they're born. So we have these bacteria that are on our mother's vaginas. When we go through the birth canal, we pick them up, they get into our mouth, in our body, and that's what first inoculates us. If we are born by cesarean section, then generally the skin bacteria is what gets in us first, and they've done a lot of very big studies to show that babies that are born by cesarean section will have more of the skin organisms in their gut than they will the gut organisms initially. And thus there's been a push recently for women who need to deliver by cesarean, and there's real needs for that, that they actually take a sponge that's been sitting in the vagina, so it's kind of soaking up those bacteria, and they'll wash the baby's face with it so that they can start to inoculate those babies born by cesarean section with the bacteria. And this is in the conventional world. This is not anything woo-woo. This is not alternative. This is everyday OB/GYN doctors are doing this because we really see the great benefit of having a good inoculum of these good healthy GI bugs from the beginning of life to the end of life. So we have billions. We actually have more bacterial DNA in our gut than we do human DNA in our entire body. So there's some people who say that kind of questions who's driving the bus. I'm going to leave that for you to think about. But just know that there's about 10 times as many bacterial DNA in and on us than there are of us. So when we're born, we're mostly human DNA. Throughout life, and when we die, we're actually more bacterial DNA. Okay, so it's something to think about, all right? So we are really not just an individual human, we are a symbiotic unit here that works together with all those bacteria. So again, just some food for thought when you're thinking philosophically about the big picture. So probiotics, why do we take them? Because with our current way we live, especially in North America, we tend to be exposed to a lot of antibiotics. We take them from a young age throughout life. We often take them willy-nilly for colds, which of course they don't help for. But those antibiotics kill off not only the pathogenic bacteria that we want to kill off, but they kill off our good bacteria. And so the good bacteria, we need to help to bring them back in, right? And they've done some studies on this as well. So when you take an antibiotic, a single course of an antibiotic, you knock down your microbiome by generally about 50%. And it takes at least a year, one whole year, 365 days, for that microbiome to regrow. It never goes back to exactly how it was before. It's always changed. There's always changing proportions of the different species and genuses, but it will take about a year to really regrow. That's particularly important when you think about children. So if you give a child, a baby, an antibiotic, and their immune system is just learning, and I'll go into kind of what the probiotics or what the bacteria, your microbiome does, but these babies are given antibiotics and it can take at least a year for their gut to regenerate that whole microbiome. Now, what is that microbiome doing in a baby? Well, actually a lot of stuff. We've found that in the first year of life, that's when the immune system is being tested. It goes out there and it kind of holds out things, the bacteria do, they hold out little molecules and say your immune system tests them and will decide whether it's self or not self. So this microbiome is really important in this whole process of deciding about a healthy immune system. If you don't have a good microbiome, then you tend to have a less healthy immune system. So this is being developed in that first year of life. Really important to try not to use antibiotics unless absolutely necessary. Obviously, if they are, they are. But don't just use them for colds or for a fever that doesn't look like it has a bacterial source. So that's in the first year of life. We also see that children that were born by cesarean section have a lot more immune issues. And again, we think that's because they're getting more of the skin bacteria exposed to their microbiome than the gut bacteria in their gut. So really important initial first few months and years. Fast forward to adults nowadays. So we've got exposure to antibiotics. We are very clean, so we don't eat a lot of dirt on our food like we used to, 1,000 years ago. So we're exposed to less, and then we don't eat as much of the foods that feed them. So probiotics need to be fed. They are fed what's called prebiotics, okay? So prebiotics are fibery foods. These are soluble fibers. So soluble means that they can break down in water. So what kind of foods are these? Think garlic, think onion, think asparagus, think any of the root vegetables. You can look at different things like artichokes, jamaica or jamaica, however you like to say that. Underripe fruit, also a really great source of prebiotic fibers. What doesn't have any fiber in it? Meat, your simple starches. These are not going to feed your bacteria. So your nuts, your seeds, your vegetables, your fruits, all of these are really critical, indispensable in a healthy diet. And not so much because it feeds us, which it does, but because it feeds our microbiome. And so that healthy microbiome is getting fed. Now, another important fact to think about with your diet is if you're taking your probiotic and you don't feed it, it's not going to stick around. So you can take all the capsules of probiotics that you want, but if you're not eating a diet that's high in these good healthy fibers, those bacteria are going to go the minute you stop taking your probiotics. Now, I used to tell people too that because of this, if they started to change their diet and really incorporated a lot of good healthy nuts and seeds and vegetables and fruits, that after a few years they probably didn't need the probiotic. But recent research is probably proving me wrong, that people probably, because of our environment, because of our culture, we probably still do need probiotics throughout our life. Now that doesn't mean that you have to get them in pill form, and I wanted to show you some of the pills. So there's all different varieties of probiotics. You can get them in pills, and again, they should be in a dark container if you get them. And good ones usually are going to need to be chilled so that you keep them so that they're not growing, right? So you packed a whole bunch of bacteria in these little capsules, and then if they're exposed to humidity, to moisture, or to heat, then they start to grow, right? That's what they do, that's their thing. So you have to keep them cool and dark and no moisture, it needs to be dry, so that they don't live, so that they don't start to do their thing until you've swallowed them and they're getting into your intestines. So that's one way you can take them. Now you can also take them as sachets or as little capsules. So this, and hi Sally, hi Michael, hi Maria. So you can take them in capsules, okay? So the capsules, because they're individually wrapped, they don't have to be chilled. So these ones you can keep out on your table. You wouldn't keep in a hot car though still, but you don't have to keep them in the fridge because they're individually wrapped, they're desiccated, and so these will stay fresh for a very long out on a table, but again, never in the heat. So you can get good quality probiotics that you don't have to keep in the fridge. That's a question I get all the time. But there are many good quality ones that you do keep in a fridge. So just looking at the company that makes them, I was going to show you. So there's all different varieties. One that I use very commonly, and you don't have to get in a doctor's office, you can get at your nearby drugstore, the VSL number 3. And this comes in a variety of doses, but they tend to be very high doses. And it's a really good quality probiotic. It's the one that most of the studies have been done with. So this has most of the research behind it. The other ones, of course, do. So the probiotics, first let me just tell you a little bit about how they can be organized. So what you're looking for in a probiotic. And somebody asks if you could freeze them. Hi, Deborah. You probably really shouldn't freeze them. I'm not sure if they would come out of the freezing as robust as they would have gone into. They used to be refrigerated, that just kind of puts them in a quiet mode, but freezing them might kill them, so I would just be careful about that. And then I had another question. Let me see if I can go back to this. Do I recommend taking a prebiotic in a pill form? You can use that. That's absolutely very valid. But I'm always going to the food first, Brian, you know that. But food is going to be the best because Mother Nature has created all this fibrous food with lots of wonderful things in them. And if you're taking it in a pill or as a powder, those are still very, very valid. You can use them, but that wouldn't be my preference. I would only use them if there's a certain reason why you'd want to. Maybe you are having some problems, so you can't tolerate a lot of the fiber, and so you want to go to something that's smaller. So some people will get a lot of gas and bloating sometimes with fiber, especially if their microbiome's not used to eating that. So that might be a reason to do that. So you can do that. You can do it for a short while, but always go into the food. So what you want to look for in a probiotic is you want to look to see how many billion colony-forming units, and it says down here, very small print, 30 billion colony-forming units. So a colony-forming unit is the unit that we use to kind of measure probiotics in. So that means each colony-forming unit can make a colony, which will then grow and make other guys. So you're looking for, in general, 20 to 30 billion to start off with if you're not used to taking probiotics. If you jump from that and you go right up to this one here, which is 450 billion colony-forming units, you will get some gas and bloating. So if you're not used to eating fiber, you're not used to taking probiotics, start off low and then gradually increase it. Now, when you're looking at the ingredients, the back of the bottle, because you always want to read for anything that you're buying, ingredients. So you're looking for the different species. Now there's not one species that we know is the best, right? We haven't found that out. So we do know that diversity is important, so very important. So you want a diverse exposure to different probiotics, but one is not the be all and end all. So what I'm looking for when I'm looking at these species, I'm looking at, okay, do I have at least 5 or 6 different species? I don't want just one. I don't want 2, I don't want 3, I want at least 5. And if you're looking at the VSL here, that you're looking at, I think this one has, I want to say 10 different species. It's not saying on the bottle, but I know it's quite a few. So they have a wide variety of species. So you're getting that diversity, and again, always multiple species. So is there one you should stay on for life? No, because this company's species are going to be different from this company's species, which are going to be different from this company's species, and again from this. And there might be 1 or 2 that they overlap. You're going to usually get one called lactobacillus, and you're going to usually get one called bifidobacter. So you might get a little bit of overlap, but you want to look to see that you're getting different species. So I'll usually do one bottle of one bottle of something else, one package of something else, and switch it around. So every month or 2, I'm doing a different package, a different company's probiotics. You, of course, are always looking for quality, so you don't want the cheapest probiotic. They don't usually come with a certificate of analysis, which is what I usually ask for in all of my other supplements, but they can have on them that they're made in a pharmaceutical grade facility. You're looking for this CGMP, Certification of Good Manufacturing. So most of these companies will have that. Anything that's pharmaceutical grade, such as the VSL, automatically has to have that because it's pharmaceutical. It's pharmaceutical, so it has pharmaceutical grade. It's made in a pharmaceutical grade facility. So we know now what a probiotic is and what you're looking for when you're purchasing one. Now the question I've gotten from people is, who needs one? So most people can benefit from a probiotic unless you eat a very high fiber diet and have not really been on antibiotics and have a good healthy gut. You don't have any GI issues. Then you may be able to get away from it. But that's not most people. Unfortunately, most of us don't have the healthiest diet. We eat a lot of sugar-containing foods. We have a very low fiber intake. And that, as a side note, your fiber intake, the recommendations is at least 30 grams of fiber a day. 40 grams is better. Just compare this to what our ancestors ate. They used to eat 100 grams of fiber a day. So, side note, they can look at the fossilized feces of our ancestors, of the human, our human species, but the fossilized poop, essentially. And they can tell from that that we ate more than 100 grams of fiber in a day. So that's way more than we get right now. So I'm not asking you to do that, but if you can try and increase your fiber in your diet, and just think of those little bacteria in your gut that you're feeding. And these are all some very yummy foods. So they don't have to be, there are some foods like dandelions, very good. And there's some other foods that people don't eat quite as often nowadays. So just go for the onions, the garlic, the asparagus. These are, easy to obtain. You're not going to eat 40 grams of that, but you can certainly eat the peels of apples. You can eat broccoli. You can eat cauliflower. You can eat, if you're going to have a potato, have the peel. So really try to bring that fiber in all the different foods that you eat. So pretty much everybody could use a probiotic. The one group of people that you might want to question is people that are on chemotherapy, because that hits their immune system. And then even the good bacteria have the potential for causing problems. So if anybody's on chemotherapy or immunosuppressed for any particular reason, then you might want to talk to your doctor about whether the probiotics are good for you. But generally, most people it's going to be good for. So that's who should have it. Now, and I've addressed should you take them forever, and the question is, yeah, probably you should. And I've addressed the question of what's the best probiotic. Now, let me tell you a little bit about some of the new information that's coming out. So I told you a little bit about the prebiotics and what they're made from. So they're feeding our bacteria. Now, some cool stuff that's coming out, it's cool to the nerdy Dr. George, is that there's these things called postbiotics. So we always knew that the probiotics were good for us. We knew that they help to cause or improve immunomodulation in our gut. We know that they help make neurotransmitters. So the serotonin is made mostly in your gut, 70%. And that requires a good, healthy microbiome to make serotonin. So people that are depressed often don't have a good, healthy microbiome. So these are some cool things that we already knew, but we didn't really know why. And now we're understanding that what happens is the bacteria in our gut, they eat the food that we're eating, they break it down, and they release their end products. So their poop is some gas and some different molecules. So they'll make a hydrogen gas, a methane gas, which might make you burp or pass gas, but they're also making other chemicals. And some of these chemicals are called short-chain fatty acids. So short-chain fatty acids are something that's really imperative for a good, healthy gut. And we don't make them, only our bacteria do. So if we're not eating the vegetables or we don't have a healthy microbiome, we don't make these short-chain fatty acids. So what's the big deal? What do? These short-chain fatty acids, there's three major ones: butyrate, propionate, and acetate. Now in a human person, the butyrate is going to be the predominant one, but the propionate and the acetate are also important. And the different species of bacteria make different end products. So this genus might make the butyrate, and this genus might make the propionate, and this one makes the acetate. So again, diversity. So what do these short-chain fatty acids do? They do some very, very cool things. So when we look at the whole system, the butyrate actually is an energy source for your colon cells, for the cells in your colon. So it's not only an energy, so it feeds them kind of like a sugar would, but in a healthier way. So it does that, but it also helps to support your immune system again, okay? And so it increases this thing called NF-kappa B. And NF-kappa B is important in modulating your immune system. So it brings that NF-kappa B down so that your immune system is less inflamed, okay? Then it also increases something called PPAR gamma, which is another immunomodulatory molecule that humans make, and that can help to increase that. It decreases depression. We already kind of talked about how it's making some chemicals that help to make your serotonin and other neurotransmitters. And it also increases the BDNF that we need for our brain health. So BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that's something that we can increase with that high intensity interval training that we've talked about before in other Facebook Lives. But there's other things that can do it, and the butyrate increases that. So why is that a big deal? Well, BDNF helps to increase neuroplasticity. It helps us to learn. So we've learned that the bacteria in your gut that make this butyrate are actually helping us to increase our memory, improve our cognition, our learning. So this is all really important stuff for the whole body, right? In functional medicine, we learn that the gut kind of rules, and if the gut's healthy, the rest of the body is healthy, and this is one of the reasons why. So the butyrate also works. It can help to decrease the leaky gut. It can help to improve skin. It helps to improve sore joints. It can work in a myriad of different ways, but all through the gut. So that's one of the postbiotics. There's a few other ones. Indole is one, and there's a few other chemicals that get very chemically sounding names, so postbiotic is just the simplest. Now there's some researchers that are considering using the postbiotics rather than the probiotics. So for example, that group that I told you about, people on chemo or that have immune system suppression, they may not be able to tolerate a probiotic, a living organism in their gut that might start to cause disease, even though they don't normally, but if you're immunosuppressed, it's possible. So in those people, maybe we give them the postbiotics. We don't know this yet. There's still research being done, but it's a really interesting area of research, I think, in terms of taking the end results, taking the metabolites of those probiotics and putting them in a gut to help heal it. So watch out for that, look for that into research. So at this point, I am a few minutes over. If anybody has any questions, obviously shout them out. I've tried to answer them as we kind of went through. But stay tuned. Next week we will be back. Leslie will be back in town, and we will be talking about her new book. She's written an awesome new book about how to divorce yourself from your diagnosis. So next week we will be speaking about that, and that's, I think, really important. It's not that you can't try to heal and look at your diagnosis, but it doesn't have to rule you. It doesn't have to be who you are, right? So she's going to tell us all about that next week, okay? As there's no other questions at this time, I am going to close off and just say thank you very much for staying with me, to hanging out here and learning about probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics. Okay, take care until next week.